Hello again. Thanks for your patience and welcome. My name is Ellen Kiter and I am the Chief Curator here at the Carl. And we are in for a wonderful treat this afternoon. Our honored guest, Seymour Chwast, is a legendary graphic designer with a career that spans nearly 70 years. In 1954, Seymour co-founded Pushpin Studios, where he and his colleagues revolutionized visual culture, from book jacket and poster design to product packaging and illustration art. Through the decades, Seymour wrote and illustrated more than 40 picture books. Yet his contributions to graphic design have long overshadowed the picture book side of his career, until now. We are so proud that Kid in a Candy Store is the first museum exhibition to focus on Seymour's books for children. He creates books with the same inventive design, humor, and love of typography found in his commercial art. I especially admire his unique approach to book construction, such as the 1986 title, Keeping Daddy Awake on the Way Home from the Beach, which folds out into a 6-foot-long panoramic story. Seymour enthusiastically lent his design expertise to our installation. We can thank Seymour for the giant black cat graphic and the tall city video tower. He crafted the 40 creatures, birds, cats, monkeys, and elephants, that perch and hang from wires across the gallery ceiling. And lest we forget, Seymour also designed the exhibition poster, which is available for sale in our museum bookshop. This afternoon, Seymour will talk with the esteemed Leonard Marcus, who curated the exhibition. Leonard is one of the world's preeminent authorities on children's books and the people who create them. He is the author of more than 25 award-winning biographies, histories, and interview collections. Leonard teaches at New York University and the School for Visual Arts, and he presents lectures on children's literature around the world. To us, Leonard is a founding trustee of the museum, the longtime chair of our collections committee, and the creative genius behind the Carl Honors. We are grateful that Leonard and Seymour made time in their busy lives to be here with us today. They will be available too after their conversation to sign books in the Great Hall. So thank you, Seymour and Leonard. Take it away.
Well, thank you all for being here. It's such a joy, really, for me to be here with Seymour, and as it has been to work with you over these last few years on some of Seymour's more recent picture books, which I had a chance to edit, and now on this exhibition. I said to Seymour's wife, Paula Scher, who's a very distinguished designer in her own right, how remarkable it was that Seymour had made over 40 picture books during his career, and that constitutes a career in itself. And she said, well, that's Seymour. He's very prolific and he's sort of wonderfully responsive, I think, in a collaborative situation, as I've come to experience with many other people. I thought I would start by accounting for the title of this show, and it comes from something that Seymour said to Steve Heller, who's a great writer about graphic design, and a close friend of Seymour's and now a friend of mine too. Steve asked Seymour what he would have done if his career in graphic art had not worked out. And he replied,
work in a candy store, of course.
So it seems the perfect way to give a name to this wonderful collection of colorful, experimental, playful, and insightful. Despite how simple some of the books look, they're so full of insight into the way children look at the world and the way they think about it. So I put together some pictures for us to talk about. Some of them preview the show, which is not so far from here within the museum, some of which say something about Seymour's past and his other activities in the world of art and design. We also have this thing out in the lobby, which is a kind of, we call it a photo op. And it's based on a book that Seymour illustrated called Moon Ride, written by Harriet Sieber. And this photo on the right here is Seymour at the 1939 New York World's Fair.
With my mother.
Yeah, yeah. Would you like to say something about that?
That's all I remember about it. The Tron and the ball and the tower was a symbol of the World's Fair.
Yeah. And I put that photo on the left there so you could see the symbol of the fair in context. It was meant to represent the world of the future, though in the second year of the fair, the Second World War had begun, and they melted down that structure for armaments. Do you know that? Yeah. Kind of ironic. So, Seymour, you grew up in Brooklyn, and in particular in Coney Island, right?
Coney Island and the Bronx.
Mm-hmm. And I'm told that you spent some time wandering around Coney Island with a sketchbook as maybe a teenager.
Oh, sure.
Is that true?
It was a way to pick up girls.
Oh. Oh, so the art part of it was just kind of on the side. Afterthought. Yeah. But you must have been kind of interested in some of the things you saw, I would think, right? I mean, it was such a fantasy environment. Did that appeal to you?
Coney Island?
Yeah.
Well, I was more interested in the sideshows, which were great, you know. Strange kind of show business that was going on, along with Nathan's hot dog stand, which was great.
Yeah.
It cost a nickel in those days. And my father was a waiter, and I just remembered that he worked for a delicatessen, and I painted a sign here because we increased the price of a hot dog from a nickel to 7 cents. So that's what was my first commercial job.
Then another early foray into art occurred in a beauty parlor. Is that what?
Yes, I did. Well, I did a
Tell us that
portrait of my
story.
mother
Yeah.
while waiting for her to get her permit.
And what was your medium that you used?
Mascara.
So you were off to quite a good start, I guess.
Got off material.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that Bobo is kind of a Coney Island kind of character. Yeah, one of your books. And then, I was very struck by all the signage in Coney Island, and considering how much you have been involved with typography and lettering, and I once heard you say that you love type.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, not everybody would say that. So, how did you, I mean, was it partly looking at things like this that made you aware of how expressive lettering can be?
Yeah, well, I learned about poster designers of the past, and I learned about graphic design that way. And in school, I found out about wood type, which was great, where the alphabets done in the 19th century were very decorative because they had to be, there were no illustrations that were done, before photo engraving. So there were a lot of great decorative typefaces done during that period.
Wasn't they did sort of what an illustration could do before there could be illustrations?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Because there's so much energy in some of these signs, and I think a lot of people react to them without thinking about it. Wouldn't probably be able to explain why, but they make such an impression.
They were expressive.
Yeah. So here are a few examples of you and lettering from different sides of your career. The image in the middle was for the New Yorker, wasn't it? Yeah.
You sure it's mine?
Well, only you can know
I
for
sure
sure.
it's somebody else.
Oh, well, it's credited to you, let's put it that way.
So,
Huh. Oh, you're not so thrilled with it.
but,
It's a little bit like some of your picture books, though.
is that Bob Dylan and John Baez?
Yes.
On my poster?
Yes. Yes, it was. Yeah, yeah. Do you know, can you tell us a story about that photo or the poster behind it? And the poster is for gin, right? It's for liquor. And yet it's also
it was gin.
Yeah.
Which was sort of hidden. So it didn't look like a commercial poster. But I didn't post that picture, I didn't take it.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. But the poster is also kind of an anti-establishment subject, right?
Sure.
Telling people to rise against the tide of conformity.
Exactly.
And so I guess that's why Bob Dylan and John Baez wanted to associate themselves with it, and it's kind of a summation of what they were doing. And I mean, what's fascinating is how you did something that was selling a product, but it also made a big statement about the life of our time. Yeah. I mean, were your parents political? Were they, you know, did you grow up being aware of things that were happening in the world and, you know, protesting things that seemed unjust?
Yeah, I became a liberal with all my friends and neighbors going on, sure.
I mean, was that part of the appeal for you of poster art, of all the different kinds of art you might have done? And considering the history of posters.
No, I enjoy posters. It's, along with it, as a way to express my political feelings. It was poster design, it was good for that.
Because you had to like say it sort of succinctly, that in a way that people just passing in the street would get right away.
Yeah, posters have to attract attention. In high school, I had a great art teacher, and he made us enter every poster competition that was happening, and I remember doing the one cancer, poster for cancer, a few things like that.
I've got a picture of him. Oh, there he is. Leonard S.
Leon Friend.
Yeah.
He had come from Germany, and he was just great because he was able to teach us about graphic design, and wrote a book called That Graphic Design, when even before that term was released.
Yeah. I mean, I was so impressed that in high school you could have someone who took you so seriously and was so ambitious to have you become aware of the whole world of graphic design.
Yeah, I was lucky to have been in his class.
And he took you to exhibitions, I think, right? And
Well, we went, we saw him design and went to the studios a few times.
yeah, you know, I mean, it's so rare, and there must be some teachers here, and that sort of ultimate commitment that I think he made to the students.
Yeah.
Like he was really thinking about their future and sort of opening doors in different ways.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. That's the school, Abraham Lincoln High School. I noticed we put Abraham Lincoln in the alphabet book. I'm not sure if there was any connection there or not. Lincoln was a good guy anyhow.
Why not?
Yeah. So we're not going to be telling the whole story of Seymour's education, but from Lincoln he went to Cooper Union in Greenwich Village, which is one of the great art schools in New York, and then from there, with some friends he met at the school, founded Pushpin Studios, and Milton Glaser, Edward Sorrell, and Reynolds Ruppin were among the people who became a big part of that effort. Could you just tell everyone what Pushpin Studios was at the beginning and what it became?
Well, we wanted, while we were in school, we wanted a freelance. And I got together, I think it was with Ed Sorrell one evening, and decided to do a little promotion piece. And I'd seen Farmer's Almanac with old types and very quaint cuts, and wanted to do something in that style. So we called it the Almanac, and then the push pins were made out in connection with design, because all designers used push pins in those days, tack their work on their drawing boards. And the push pin Almanac was a small booklet that we sent out a few times a year, each one on a different subject. And we sent it to art directors and editors and publishers and in order to get work, and it succeeded.
Yeah, I would say in a pretty big way. Yeah, I mean, Steve Heller, who I mentioned a little bit before, had this great way of summarizing the impact of pushpin and saying that they were the Beatles of graphic design, you know, and I mean, really changed the way things looked. I mean, from what I know, in the post-war years, there was the big influence of modernism, and sort of the idea was to, you know, this terrible war had occurred, and maybe it was time to move on and not be so rooted in historical sources and ideas, and to just come up with something that's completely new for the world. And so a lot of the graphic design of the 50s and 60s was on the abstract side and didn't make reference to historical styles of art and design. But you began to sort of say, no, why not bring some of that in and mix it up in a new way, right?
Yeah, but it happened to field, people and designers all together, where all of a sudden these, you know, Art Nouveau became big, and you know, Art Deco, and those styles came back here with a sort of new vigor here with strong typography, and they became a thing. Well, I wanted to mention something about the name Pushpin.
Yeah.
Here, because we, you know, it was a name that we wanted to call the almanac something. We called it the Pushpin Almanac. But the first agent that we had were on staff working at Pushpin really hated that name and thought it was too babyish. He wanted our studio to be called Hamilton Studios here, so, something respectable and serious.
Did he have a musical in mind also? So I just put up a few of your posters because you became so known for these things, and I was wondering if you would want to say a word or two about any of those designs.
Peugeot, yeah, I just did a couple of posters for the agency there, and my effort to do a little surrealism with that. And I always work with big and small side images on posters. Big and small was always part of what I did. And the same with Nicholas Nickleby.
Yeah, I mean, I love that poster, and the ladder is fascinating, but it's kind of hard to figure out what it's doing on his shoulders exactly. What were you thinking about when you came up with that design?
Well, Nicholas Nickleby was burdened by all sorts of characters in the Dickens story here. So Nicholas Nickleby is the poor fellow there, and having to have all these people annoying him.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like one of the images from your 12 Circus Rigs books, like they're kind of acrobats, but on his shoulders.
I copy myself all the time.
And the one in the middle, I mean, it's such a strong anti-war statement.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's a very beautiful image. And the color. And the
Well, I got the slogan from a button that was sold, actually sold in postage shops. Postage was sold in shops in those days, in those 60s, on you know, psychedelic posters and anti-war posters, because the Vietnam War was starting up. But that slogan, I didn't invent that slogan.
How did you get into making picture books, which you started, the first one was in 1967. So Pushpin would have been going for several years by then, and you had a lot of other things going on. And I just wonder what it was that brought you in that direction around then.
Well, it started in high school. I did a whole dummy of a book called Farmer Gooseby Gives In, which is my version of the Orwell Animal Farm, the same story. But children's books, to me, was an area where there's a lot of freedom of drawing. Doing the commercial artist, I have to be careful of what the art director wants, and the art director has to be careful about what the editor wants. But doing my kind of drawing for children's books allowed me a lot more freedom. There's also rejections, but they come along as well. But there was a nice opportunity there.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Eric Carle, went through this somewhat the same trajectory, having been a artist doing advertising work, and then turned to picture books in mid-career. And did you have any qualms about selling things with your art that made you want to try something different from that?
You mean doing fine art?
Oh, no, I mean doing ads for products as opposed to art for art's sake.
Oh, no, I was a commercial artist. Sure. And they did what they told me to do. That's okay to rent.
Yeah. So here are a few of your posters, and wondered if you would talk a little bit about these.
Well, for the children's, Brooklyn Children's Museum, on the left was, they asked me to do a poster in some sort of, if I recall, something that represented the museum. I came up with this sort of robot-like character. And they made a three-dimensional version of it. They used it in parades. Also a wastebasket, because they had flipped up. Also they used it for that. For the peace poster, I done it actually was invited to do a poster for a Japanese design organization. I had done one of the posters there. But what I love about this poster is able to show how lucky you can be sometimes, because the kid is wearing a pointed hat that makes the A in peace. Oh. And if peace was spelled P-A-E-C-E, I couldn't have done this poster. I was just lucky that way. And then there's the poster for this show. Why don't you say something about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that's striking is how each one is sort of a little bit different in style. I think it reflects your not repeating yourself, wanting to try different things a lot in your artwork, different techniques. And
yeah, for me, the style is determined by the message, how it's used, and there's all sorts of limitations. So there are reasons for doing the work in a certain way. It depends upon what the problems are.
Yeah.
And trying to avoid them.
And do you usually do a number of versions of a poster before you hit on the one that feels right, or do you does it sort of come to you all of a piece as an image?
Well, I usually do 2 or 3 versions, and hope that the client would pick the right one.
Did that happen most of the time?
It was a mix.
Yeah. I once heard Robert Blackman speak about doing covers for the New Yorker, and he said that he would do 7 versions, and they'd always pick the one he liked the least. So you never know.
You should have done it to 6.
So, alphabet books are one of the oldest genres of picture books, and this is, I think, just absolutely one of my favorites, any that I've ever seen. This alphabet parade, which, though it's in the form of a bound book, you could set the images side by side and have one continuous frieze, and it would be a parade, unlike any other. And you said when we had a conversation once that it was this image by Kurt Schwitters from the 1930s that sort of gave you
Inspired.
Yeah.
Inspired.
Yeah. And Schwitters was kind of on a busman's holiday, making a children's story with some friends, and it started with some wooden matchsticks laying on a table. They started fiddling around with it, and they started getting the arms and legs of the characters. And then they came up with this sort of not very child-friendly story about a it's basically an anti-capitalist story. There's a businessman and a crow, who is presented as a scarecrow, and a rooster comes along and attacks the scarecrow, tears it to pieces. The scarecrow is meant to represent capitalism, and the rooster is the revolution. So, how many children could he possibly have known? And yet the graphics are really extraordinary. Yeah. So, let's see. So here on the right is the cover image, and we have this in the show. And I wondered, the colors are so vivid, and I was wondering if you would tell us how you added color to your drawings for this book and others that you did.
Well, in those pre-computer days, I had a file of a couple of hundred sheets of colored film. It was color printed on film that could be applied to the art. I would make a line drawing, usually in black, and then place the color film right on it and cut it around and burnish it down a little bit. And it was amazing that the colors have held up nicely. And that's what I did for years.
Did you feel like the color palette in art was changing at that time? It was really becoming sort of psychedelic, right?
I have no idea. I mean,
Leonard, what's the date of the alphabet parade?
Oh, well, 91 is when the book was published. Yeah.
The only rule I have about color is that the bright colors should be used in a small space, and the dull colors in a big space. That's my rule.
What's
Psychotypography, you always never indent the first paragraph, first line of the paragraph. Otherwise, there's no other
What's the rationale for the color rule that you just mentioned?
It's a way to balance, I guess, the color here. If you do a big area in a bright red, here it kills everything else.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because that's very important to you, isn't it? The composition and the way everything balances together. Because so often it feels like you're putting things together that most people wouldn't think could go together. Like all these different typefaces, for example, that you sometimes combine. Like in that anti-war which we looked at a moment ago. You know, there are several different typefaces and some images, and it's all in a sort of beautiful balance, which kind of overrides the fact that these are types that wouldn't necessarily be found next to each other. So it's always kind of surprising. And then you did for numbers what you had just done for letters, didn't you? In the surface. Yeah. And here, you know, it builds like as an accumulative story, like 12 Days of Christmas, and it gets more and more complicated. I mean, this is such a feat of choreography and sort of traffic, being a traffic cop, sort of keeping everybody going in the right lane. That must.
Which circus ring was this?
I think that's 9. Is it 11? Yeah. And then I have 12. That's the final one. It's kind of dizzying in a way, and yet there's a kind of harmony within the craziness. Yeah. So that must be something you enjoy doing, creating a complicated situation and then finding.
No, I hated it.
You did it for the money, I bet. Yeah. Huh. And then you said that you like the idea of making picture books that do something, and there's a whole group within your books of books that might be described as having a novelty effect of one kind. Like for this one, this is the old woman who lived in a shoe, and she goes through a change if you pull the tab and you find out what's inside the shoe. Yeah, and then this is from a book called Limerick Bricks, which is one of your earlier books, I think, from 73. And then this looks like somebody's nose and eyes and mustache. And then it turns out to be someone jumping on a candlestick. Yeah. Huh. So, when Eric Carl talked about making the very human caterpillar, he said that before there was any idea of a caterpillar, he had a stack of papers sitting on his drawing table, and it made him feel restless. So he started punching holes in the paper just to change it and give it another aspect or dimension. And then he began thinking, well, what could those holes be? And they turned out to be the path that the caterpillar follows from page to page. And it seems to me that that way of describing that impulse is to make have a book do something, which is exactly how you have talked about these books. And I wonder, is that like part of the sort of DNA of being a graphic designer, where you're trying to push an image to its ultimate potential?
I think the idea of making a book into an object, where it's three-dimensional and where things can change as much as possible. Paper does limit one. There's so much that you can do. But there are terrific pop-up books here. I've done very limited pop-ups. But in cover books where you have to turn the page around, or there are little flaps where an animal turns into a different animal by adding little flaps to it. Mr. Merlin.
Did you have anything like that when you were growing up, that you particularly enjoyed?
No, I mean, I was inspired by White and Pinocchio
Mhm.
really affected my life.
Mhm.
See what you can do with motion and color and shapes.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you go back and see them more than once?
Oh, yeah. Well, especially The Wizard of Oz.
Well, there's that moment when it goes from black and white to color, which is
Yeah.
magical.
Yeah, I like tricks like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's one of these very long books that we have in the show here. And I have this photo that I found from a regional magazine. I hope that's well enough in focus, but that's a little boy in the gallery looking at two very long books.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to me, what's so striking is how much bigger the book is than he is. And I have the feeling that that's part of the appeal for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that somehow this book is this big thing in the world, you know, in the way that if you go to New York City for the first time and you see a skyscraper, you think, wow, you know, I didn't know life could do that, you know. So I think that's maybe one of the appeals of those books. Maybe that they are
Well, Traffic
also.
Jam, which is,
Yeah.
opens up here and turns from an ordinary book into something special.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, well, it's like the book becomes a part of the story in a way that you didn't expect. Yeah. Here's the one that you turn to the side, you know, vertical and horizontal, and you can read this book from either end. And if you start in one end, you're in the city, and if you start in the other end, you're in the countryside, and the country is horizontal, and the city is vertical. So these are a couple of the horizontal images. And of course, these two little kids are coming along, and they see what appears to be a path. But we can see that it's actually this giant snake.
Didn't I use that girl on the poster?
Yeah, well, she also looks like the girl who wants to have her cake and eat it too, in your book, Little Lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so maybe this was her first appearance in your work. This is the second one. And then this airplane comes along, and that's when it's time to
turn.
You know, and you get these incredible, I think, vertical images. And I love seeing, you know, a city building that really feels like a city building, the way you have it in the open, when the page is open. And then the Uncle Sam, you know, on stilts is so wonderful too. Then I wondered if you ever made your own toys when you were growing up, because you seem to be into like paper cutouts and things like that, which you know, are like toys that you can make at home. So of course you did those great birds for the gallery too. Did you ever like tinker with things? Or? No.
A lot of sketches, but they didn't go anywhere.
Oh yeah. Well, you wanted to be a comics artist, I guess, for at least a little.
Oh no, I wanted to work for
Walt Disney. Yeah.
Doing animation.
Then I think you told me why you decided not to do that. Do you remember what you said, or was there one reason why you didn't go to California to do that?
I don't know why I didn't go, because I heard that you can make $25 a week.
Oh. Well, the thing you told me was that it would have meant leaving New York City. You just didn't want to do that.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've tried to leave New York City. It's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So here we come to one of the more recent books of yours, and a kind of book which is a game in a way, right? A guessing game. And here's an example. You're turning the page to get to the image on the right, but Seymour sort of presents these little bits, fragments of an image, and asks you to guess what they're part of. And it's always a different animal. And I think it's a kind of game that never has to end. You know, sort of laying out the very simple rules for a game that you could extend on your own. And I just think it's so clever, and it's like the beginning of abstract thought for children. You know, how you can extrapolate from limited information toward a vision of what something can be. He seems to get the idea. There's another one. And there's just something so wacky about it. Yeah. And then this book, were you by chance a shy child growing up? Were you at all shy when you were growing up?
Always.
Yeah, because I mean, this is a book about a boy who wants a friend and doesn't have one, and it's kind of an epic, I think, isn't it? I mean, he just goes all over, and he doesn't limit himself to humans. He talks to all kinds of creatures that he meets in his travels around the world. And it starts off with this premise that if you want to have a friend, it's a good idea to bring a gift. And so you see him, you're with the walrus, and then camping out with this bear. And it's just so absurd, and I think, but at the same time true to the feeling behind it. He goes to the moon, maybe they'll find a friend there. You know, the character that this boy reminds me of from picture book history is Harold in the Book of Crayons. You know, who always keeps a straight face, and you're always made to feel the seriousness of what he's about, what he's trying to accomplish. None of that sort of grinning at the audience. And this is maybe my favorite one. And then, do you want to tell everyone how it ends? This book.
Oh, why don't you show it now?
I don't have the last one.
Yeah, he goes to the house next door.
Yeah.
Where there are a couple of kids that he doesn't know. They just moved in. So one spread shows him going up to the door, and the two kids on the inside, or you see them in the window, and then the following spread is they're all together. They made a friend.
So it was just, the answer was right next door, but he had this incredible journey to get there.
Right.
I just love that. And it is so hard. I mean, I was kind of shy also, and it can be so hard just to start a conversation with somebody. And I think that's the feeling you really captured in this book. You know, like bridging over to that other world, which is the other person. So I'm ending just with this, which is the image with which we also began. Yeah. I bet people here have questions they'd like to ask Seymour, so it's your turn. Nick.
Was Sim's Take-Back part of the project? Take-Back and Robbins and Chwast doing children's books. Eric Carl doing children's books. Leo Leone doing all these fabulous graphic designers that migrate. What was in the water?
Sims and what was not part of Pushkin, Reynolds was.
Oh, okay.
And I think it became Reynolds and Sims became partners separately from Pushkin.
They were all graphic designers that migrated to doing or took on, added to your portfolio of children's books. All of which seem to me a common element of this very bold visual impact that it has on the young reader.
Yeah, and I think also what Seymour said before about having the freedom to tell a story in a book as opposed to having to satisfy the client's list of requirements was very attractive to graphic designers in general. And the list is very long of people who work in both fields. Yeah. Somebody else?
Seymour, could you talk a little bit about your experience at Cooper Union and what it was that was sort of like pushed your friendships there, pushed and evolved out of that, but was some of the things that you were interested in, was that what was sort of being taught at Cooper Union? In other words, how much was your vision for what you wanted to do something that was being taught at Cooper Union when you were there?
Well, Cooper Union was a mix for me. I had one class, I don't know whether it was elective or not, but it was a class in calligraphy. And what I found out quickly is that a left-handed person could not do calligraphy very well. So that was a bust. But I had a terrific teacher in teaching typography, and it was all hands-on. And I started using the composing stick and setting type. And eventually, I think I had already left school, but I did a book with woodcuts that I had made, and printed 80 copies of them. I bought a font of type and set the type, quotations. The only thing I couldn't do was bind the pages into a book, so I had to get a professional binder there. But it was great being able to do the work that I did on the book.
Was anyone at Cooper teaching illustration or even children's book illustration? Or was that not a subject?
No, not really children's books. No, Leo Manso taught book jacket design.
Was Professor Shaw still there? Does that name?
What was his first name?
I'd like to say Charles, but his last name was Shaw.
Shaw? I don't.
Just a shout out to teachers. Ashley Bryan went to Theodore Roosevelt in the Bronx, and his art teachers encouraged him to go on to art school. He went downtown to the schools in the city, and it was turned down. They said, why would we waste a place on a colored person, Ashley being colored? And then they said, well, then you apply to Cooper Union. And so that's how Ashley ended up at Cooper. And it was Professor Shaw who really encouraged him in illustration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cooper Union was great. It was a free school.
Well, that was important to Ashley, too.
It was certainly important to me to get into that school. 3 years.
Anybody else? Yeah, sir.
Seymour, how do you feel about iPad and digital design these days?
There's some great stuff being done by type designers. And however they do it, digitally, sure.
You work on iPad much? I use type in the books that I'm doing. And I just admired some fonts that are being designed. And graphic design generally. For me, being an illustrator and working with type was an advantage from my experience. People who work with type and design are not interested in illustration and the other way around.
Jen.
Yeah. Are you working on any book projects now? Any picture book projects at the moment?
Yeah, I'm doing working on a couple of books. Another book on limericks of Edward Lear. and another one called Evil, about all the terrible people in the world.
Is that a children's book?
Unfortunately, I won't be able to fit all of them in the book.
Yeah. I was going to ask you if you're still taking suggestions.
Yeah, I had done a book on hell, which I did with Steve Heller, did the text for it, and we found 50 hells around. It's an interesting book. Interesting to find out how similar the hells are around the world with different cultures. That they cover the same area and have sort of similar rules adjusted to what the current climate is above ground. But that was fascinating thing to work on. Just cool hell.
I mean, a hell in the tropics has to be hotter than a hell.
You bet.
Anybody else?
What were Joan Baez and Bob Dylan selling?
I have no idea. I wasn't there for the taking of the photograph. But they were going together, that's all I know.
Yeah, but the photo became well known, the poster became well known, and the poster, the photo with the poster in it became a poster in itself. So it had lots of iterations and ripples. Yeah. And it's one of the, the iconic images, I think, of the 60s, really. Yeah. Anything else?
Well, thank you so
Oh,
much.
we have one more? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering where you get inspirations from, how you keep records, how much do you keep a notebook, and where some ideas,
I didn't get that.
Question is, how do you get inspiration for your books, and do you keep a notebook or a sketchbook as ideas occur to you, as you're developing new projects?
Yeah, they can come anywhere from something that's happening. I'm always trying to, we have a terrific dog, and the dogs are great to draw, and I try to get inspiration from her that give me a good idea for a book. Otherwise, I get ideas waking up in the morning, and if I'm fast enough, I write down the idea. Otherwise, I forget about it. So, story of my life.
Okay, here's the last question. Yeah.
So, what's it like sharing a life with another very talented designer, and do you work together? Do you share ideas?
Never. No, we couldn't. We tried it once. Working together, it didn't work out so. But we love each other's work. It helps. If I didn't like Paula's type design, I'd be in trouble.